ILTV Plus, your news from Israel and more 24/7. Start your free trial today. Subscribe at ILTV.tv and watch from any device.
In coronavirus news, amid the rise in COVID-19 cases and the spread of the Omicron variant, Israel is clamping down and introducing new restrictions, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett announced on Tuesday. As such, as of Friday, only people who are fully vaccinated or who have recovered from the virus will be able to enter shopping centers. Unvaccinated people will not only be allowed in to receive essential services should the center include medical clinics. This move has already garnered major criticism. And additionally, the coronavirus cabinet meeting again on Wednesday, aiming to significantly expand its list of red states for those traveling abroad. All of this, as little is still known about the Omicron variant. And so joining us now to discuss is Professor Manfred Green, Masters of Public Health Director at the University of Haifa. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's start off with, we still don't know a lot about Omicron. What do we know so far?
Well, we know that Omicron is a new variant with a lot of mutations. So a mutation is just a change in the nucleotide, in other words, in the genetic material. And when usually these changes are 1 or 2 nucleotides, this one apparently has something around about 30. That doesn't necessarily make it a more aggressive virus, but it does make it a significantly different form of the virus. It turns out that it does seem to be spreading much more rapidly. In other words, it's able to spread very rapidly. That doesn't mean that it's causing more severe disease. And the information from South Africa at the moment is that it's causing a milder disease.
Mm-hmm. And yet it seems as though Prime Minister Bennett, who until now has been, I would say, a very calm and rational voice throughout the pandemic, it seems as though he's beginning to panic a little bit. Is this fear justified? And is there something perhaps that the public isn't aware of?
I think there's a concern, particularly now that it's the winter season and that we're going to see an increase in other respiratory viruses. Then there's going to be a concern that this actually could put a tremendous pressure on the health system. So I think this is a cautious procedure in order to protect the health system.
Mm-hmm. And regarding the new restrictions, do you feel that they're necessary? Should we be adding more restrictions, having less restrictions? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the major point that concerns me is I don't feel, at least, that the businesses that are going to be affected by these restrictions particularly are being brought into the discussion adequately. I think that they should be brought in order to look at ways in which the spread of the virus can be controlled. The green pass or the COVID passport is a good way of doing it, but I think we need to talk to them in terms of how this can be implemented and what other ways they think there could be to reduce the spread of the virus in closed spaces, at least for some of them. For example, businesses on the street, I would hope, would not be included in this restriction, because I don't see any problem about people shopping from the street. I guess it's mainly in the large malls that they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And now, looking at South Africa and at Europe, we are seeing the virus spread very quickly, so we've seen in South Africa. Are we going to see it spread in Israel in the coming weeks at that rate? Are we essentially on the brink of perhaps a 5th wave?
Unfortunately, I think my answer would be yes. The virus is spreading very rapidly, and it's like the way we say you can't stop the wind. And this is just like the wind. It's going to blow, and it'll blow in different directions, and at some stage it'll blow here. So it's got, I think it's fairly certain. I would like to say probably 100% sure that it's going to spread pretty rapidly when it gets, in Israel. The effort now is just to let it spread at a lower pace. In other words, protect part of the population, so that, again, we're not overwhelming the health system. If it's a milder disease, obviously that will be an advantage, because then the health system will be less affected.
Now, Israel, once a leader in vaccinations, seems to be lagging behind in recent weeks. Many are wondering if they should get a shot, considering initial indications, at least, that it's not so effective against the Omicron variant. What would you say to the public at this time?
I don't have any magic solution. There are those who are still resisting, and we need to find out why, because vaccines are safe and effective, and we've used them for so many diseases. And it's been, if not the best, but one of the best public health interventions. So that has to come through as a message. The other is that this is a severe disease. I think some people are still not convinced. They just need to go to the hospitals to see people who are sick with COVID to know this is a very severe disease in some people. And the last thing is, again, something I've said in other broadcasts, is that I think that because, in fact, people may get tired of another dose and another dose, and we should start thinking of what we would call national immunization days or weeks, where we vaccinate the whole population in a couple of weeks, regardless of when they got their last dose. And this, of course, would be great if we did this internationally. And that would give the whole population good immunity. And I think that could be very effective in stopping the virus, or at least slowing it very dramatically.
All right, Professor Manfred Green, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Pleasure. All the best.